and welcome to episode 14 of the Cedar Arrows podcast. My name is Rebecca. I am a Christian, a wife, a homeschooling mom of 6, homesteader, homeschooler, homemaker, knitter, reader, and this is my channel where I talk about all of those things, but mostly knitting. I am thrilled that you're here with me today, and I hope that you will find something here you enjoy. Today is November 1st. It has been 2 weeks since I recorded, and I'm very proud of me to be back this soon. It is always my goal to record every other week, but this year that has been a huge challenge, and I have missed that goal more than I have made it. So I am glad to be back with you and looking forward to catching up a little bit on what I've been working on and what is going on around here. I really liked the way that I formatted things with the last video, that I kind of caught you all up on what was going on around here first. It always takes me a little bit of time to kind of get into a groove and get used to talking to the camera. And I found that I forgot fewer things that I wanted to say about the knitting projects when I just chatted for a while first. So instead of doing a life update at the end, I think for now, I'm going to move it to the beginning and just chit chat for a little bit, and then we'll go into talking about the projects next. So the last couple of weeks, let me see what's been going on. Well, I mentioned last time that we had one lonely chick, which the children named Han Solo or Hen Solo. We don't know the gender yet. We're not great at telling that when they're tiny, so whichever the case, Solo, as we call it, has done very well living alone in his little brooder box. And today we have a new batch hatching. We have one that is hatched so far today, 2 others that are working on it. So I'm hoping to go see some progress when I go check on them after I finish in here. But now, of course, being 3 weeks apart in age or so, Solo is a good bit bigger than the tiny new chick. So we're having to, we'll see if we can introduce them and have them in the same box in time. But for now, we're having to keep them in separate brooder boxes because Solo is just so much bigger and could hurt the baby tiny chicks. So, our schoolroom is entirely taken up with chick paraphernalia. And soon it will be very loud with lots of little new chicks. They are very loud. If you've ever been to a Tractor Supply store or anything like that, where they sell the day-old chicks, you know this. They're very, very loud. So very soon we will be taken over with that. It's a fun project. And we're excited to see new ones hatching. Last week, my husband had to go on a very quick work trip for some meetings here in our state, not too far away, and I was able to tag along with him. He's going anyway, so it was no extra gas. He had to get a room anyway, so it was no extra lodging work or cost, so I love it when it works out that way. So I was able to just tag along. And I spent one entire day in the hotel room, which, depending on who you are, that might not sound great, but as an introverted mother of 6, that's pretty glorious. I have some friends who would be bored to tears if they had to sit in a hotel room all day, but I knitted all day long. I took my teapot and teacup with me. I watched movies. I read a lot. It was glorious. The second day, I dropped him off at the building where he was having his meetings, and then I had the vehicle and went to a park and took a long walk and did some knitting and reading and exploring outside. So that was also very lovely. And so it was nice because, you know, it's not as much of a break for him because he was working, but it's still outside of his normal routine. So I think, you know, he enjoys that at least a little bit. It was a beautiful area that we were visiting. The weather was great. So fabulous for being outside, wandering around an area that's not my normal stomping grounds. And then, the alone time for me was nice. And then our evenings together without the children and the animals and the pressures of things needing to be done at home, it was not exactly a vacation for him anyway, but it was very nice. So we came home. We were home in time for supper on Thursday of last week and just had a wonderful getaway. But I did something that last day and really aggravated one of my feet. I really have a lot of problems with my feet. I have very high arches. I've just had foot pain and things, just had to deal with my feet and think about my feet a lot more than most of the people I know for a long time now. But I think what I was dealing with last week was a flare-up of plantar fasciitis, which I've never dealt with before, but I think that's what it was. Anyway, it was hurting a little bit when we hit the road to come home that day. We stopped for lunch and I was limping just a little, but I'm used to having to kind of stretch my feet and limber my feet up if I've been sitting long, that kind of thing. It's not unusual for me to get out of the car and limp a little bit for the first few steps, but this felt a little different than the norm. And it just got worse through the day until when I got off the couch to go to bed that night, I could not walk. My husband had to help me hobble to the bed, which is kind of humbling. It was maybe the worst pain I have ever experienced. It was awful. So I canceled all of my plans for last Friday, which I run the ladies' Bible study at my church, and we were about to start a new book, and we were all excited, and there was quite a large group that was going to gather for that, but nobody else had been prepared to teach. So it's kind of hard to pass that off at the last minute. So we all agreed just to cancel, and we'll start again next time. We'll try again next time. But I just had to cancel all of my plans. I didn't feel like I could even get ready to go, let alone drive and then be away from home. It was not doable. And I've always been an active person. And so that's a hard thing to adjust to. And I was a little concerned not knowing what was going on. It did get better through the day, and by the end of the day, I was able to walk little bits here and there, but I've been very careful this past week not to overdo it. I'm just kind of starting to feel normal, and like, I don't know, after a couple of days passed, it wasn't so much that I wasn't walking because of pain all the time, but there was also some fear involved. Like, what if I overdo it and that comes back, So that was just quite an interesting few days. But my husband took wonderful care of me, and my children took wonderful care of me. My husband was not able to stay home from work, but he is definitely the kind of guy that he wanted to. He wanted to stay home and just take care of me, which I appreciated. But the kids did. They just kept everything going with, dishes and laundry and all the things. And they served me all of my meals, and they did such a great job of taking care of me. So I'm glad to be back on my feet now. I'm glad that the worst of it was very short-lived. Very thankful to be walking around mostly normally today. That was not fun. But I'm mentioning it here because that's what's been going on. Like, I've not been quite up to my normal activity level this past week. Just trying to give my foot plenty of time to heal from that inflammation. In addition to that, we've had some kids coughing. My youngest daughter was sick for 2 weeks, and then you know how it goes, especially it seems like with large families. You always wish that they would just all be sick at the same time if they're all going to get it, but they take turns and they just pass it. Like, one is finishing up and the next one starts. So I've got one who's been coughing for over a week now, and he is feeling better, but he's still coughing pretty badly. So I've been having him stay home the last few days. It's just always something, right? But I am very thankful that the things that have felt heavy and that have been kind of overwhelming haven't been earth shattering. You know, our family is all still here. Um, we still have a roof over our heads. It could be much, much worse. One thing we have coming up that we're excited about is that my older 4 children will be gone next week to help with some disaster relief efforts in Georgia in an area that was affected by Hurricane Helene. We have some friends who are traveling to help with one of the church-run organizations that is working there, and they had some extra space in their van and asked if anybody wanted to go along. So I will be keeping their younger children here with me at my house and sending my older children with them. And they're packing up this weekend, and they're excited. They've never done anything quite like this before. We had a tornado go through our town a few years ago, and they did a little bit of help with that, but they were all smaller then, so they weren't able to do as much. But they're excited to be able to help where they can and have that experience. So I'm very glad that they get to do that and get to be a help to someone who really needs it. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that I wanted to chat about right now, so I guess we will go into the knitting. Let's begin with finished objects. My first finished object is these socks. These are the Blueberry Waffle Socks pattern. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. I can't remember the designer's name and I didn't write it down, but if you've been knitting very long or around very long, you're familiar with it, I'm sure. I talked about this pair, I think the last 2 episodes. So again, if you've been around, you've seen this, but I am happy to have the whole pair finished and have them tucked away for Christmas. These are for my youngest son, and he's gonna love them. I love this color. He loves this color. I don't really think there's anything I haven't said about these yet. But this yarn is Knit Picks Stroll in the Aurora Heather colorway. I knit him a 10-inch leg, and then his feet are almost the exact same size as mine, so that's really handy. I knit his socks the same, well, the foot part the same way I knit mine. So it's really nice. You know, I've been knitting for them long enough that I kind of know what each kid likes and just have the recipe in my head. And that makes it such a good on-the-go project. There's not any part of this sock that I can't do in the car or at a friend gathering or in a meeting or anything. I just can pick it up and go. So that's really nice. So yeah, I knit all of my socks on size 2 needles, which I think is larger than anybody else I know. I just have a really small gauge. So a lot of people use 0s and 1s. My oldest daughter is currently knitting a pair of socks on 0s, and it's so different. But my gauge is really close to hers, actually. I just have a very small gauge. So anyway, I knit all my socks on size 2s. I almost always do a slip stitch heel flap and gusset. Sometimes I do the Eye of Partridge heel for the girls' socks. I like that feminine lattice look that heel has, but this is just a traditional slip stitch heel flap and gusset and a basic rounded toe. They're just very, very nice. So I'm happy with those, happy to have them to tuck away for Christmas. And I'm really feeling like maybe I can manage with my goal to finish all their gift knitting before December begins. That is, I was thinking this morning, okay, it's November 1st. What are my goals for this month? And we can talk more about that later, but I feel like I can make it. I feel like I will manage. So this is an internal conversation monologue that I have every year around this time. I'll be feeling great. I can make it. It'll be fine. And then I have days where I'm like, there's no way. It always has worked out. I have never not had their socks done. But I'm also always trying to squeeze in as many other gifts as I can. And I have to remind myself just to go easy and chill. But I love gift knitting. And so this time of year, it's just a constant, like, can I fit one more thing in? Am I even going to get these things done? Like, I'm sure I'm not the only one, right? So, I have hit the pause button probably 6 times so far in this video. I don't have any idea where I am at this point. I mean, I know I've shown you the socks, and I think that I can salvage that footage. And so I'm going to go on to the next finished object and hope that I can piece this together in some way that's not totally insane when it's time to edit. Between kids and dogs, the house is loud, there's a lot going on, and it just is what it is. That is how I live. Okay, so next finished object. These are, I have a finished pair of mittens, not just one with 2 thumbs. These are the Samoset mittens. This is a pattern that is available for purchase on Ravelry. I knit these in Wool of the Andes from Knit Picks. The colorway is the same as the socks. This is the Aurora Heather colorway. This pattern usually has a diamond motif that goes up the center of the mitten. Just little diamonds made with spaced out pearl stitches, and it's a very cute pattern, and I have knit it several times. But my daughter wanted the cable because these mittens were made to match the hat that I gave her last Christmas. So I changed the numbers a little bit when I started the patterned back of the mitten. Only a tiny bit. I don't remember exactly. I'd have to look at my notes, but just changed it by a stitch or 2. Moved things around a little bit to make the counts right to add this cable. And it's just a lovely braided cable. I love cables in general, but this kind that has twists going in 2 different directions so it looks like a braid is just maybe my favorite. I love it. So I put the cable in instead of that panel, and like I said, it didn't require a lot of shifting in the pattern, and I think it just turned out so nicely. She really loves them. They fit her very well. So that was a really fun kind of a palette cleanser project. I put down some of my socks and other things just to focus on the mittens for a few days, and worsted weight yarn just knits up so quickly that, you know, it's always fun to put down the thing you've been working on for a while, or the thing that feels like it's taking a long time, and knit something up that's faster to work up. So seeing that design grow is always so much fun. The cabling is fun. You know, I love mittens, so that was a really great project. She really loves them, and I am very glad to have them done for her before the weather gets cold. I know some of y'all have snow and cold temperatures already. We very much do not. It'll be in the 80s tomorrow. We're in Alabama. So she will need the mittens at some point this winter, but not yet. Our coldest time is more January, February. It's still pretty warm through most of November here. So anyway, I had knit her sisters each a pair of mittens just kind of coincidentally earlier in the year. And so she's been saying it's her turn, and she has waited very patiently, but I'm glad to have them done before it gets cold, so no pressure on those. I have one other finished object that I almost forgot to mention. This was not even on my radar when I recorded last, but I really love it. I made myself a cozy for my coffee jar. I drink iced coffee, not every day, but pretty regularly out of this jar. It's the only jar I have that's this size. I mean, I do a lot of canning. Well, not a lot, but I do can. So I have a lot of jars, glass jars of all different sizes. This one is 20 ounces. And somebody gave it to me with some jelly they had made, and it's perfect for iced coffee because I can make my 8-ounce cup of coffee and put a dab of cream and then lots and lots of ice. But you know, I kind of wanted a nice tumbler, and then I thought, but those, they, you know, they sweat, they get condensation everywhere, and I don't want that. So I decided to knit myself a cozy. So I found a free pattern on Ravelry, and I've been knitting for 12 years now, literally 12 years, like last month or something. And I still hesitate to just wing it. I want a pattern. And I like having a pattern because I know somebody else has done the mental work for me, and that makes it easy. But even if I can't find a pattern, I'm not a person who wings it very well. I want somebody to tell me what to do. I'm always hesitant to try it on my own, I guess. And so I started looking for patterns, and I found a free basic pattern on Ravelry and thought, okay, well, I can use this at least for a starter, and then maybe add a cable if I want to. I didn't realize until I was finishing it up that there's not a single aspect of this cozy that I followed the pattern for. What I thought I was going to follow the pattern for the basic, like, start numbers to start with and the shaping for the bottom, because it's full, so I can't show you, but it closes up on the bottom. It's not just a sleeve, it has a bottom. Anyway, so I thought I would start and just at least have a stitch count to start with and that kind of thing. But I didn't end up using any of what the pattern said. I made it up as I went along without even realizing that's what I was doing. So, I mean, it's so simple. I would tell my daughters, oh, you could totally make that up. But I always shy away from starting from scratch without some kind of instructions. So it was kind of a boost in my confidence to realize, hey, I did that without having anybody hold my hand, without having to have a pattern. I saw what I wanted and I made it. So I used the antler cable chart from the Antler Cardigan by Tin Can Knits. So I did use a chart for the cable. But it's so simple, but it's so pretty. I was really tickled with it. I cast it on in one evening, and then I made it like most of the cozy the next morning. And it was just, again, another kind of palette cleanser project. Really fun. I love cables, as you know by now. So I've really enjoyed that pattern or that project. And I'm so happy with how it turned out. And it makes a nice kind of grippy, tactile feel for my coffee, and also it's kind of like its own coaster, so love that. Also wanted to mention this yarn. I'll show it up close again. This yarn is from Hey Sister. It's from Hey Sister Yarn Co. This was Can't Take the Sky From Me was the name of this colorway. I knit a shawl in this colorway several years ago, and I absolutely love it, and I have been kind of hoarding the scraps. My kids go through my scrap drawer all the time because, you know, they don't have just tons of cash. So instead of buying yarn, they shop my stash. And they're not usually allowed to go for a full skein. You pull out a full skein to use, but they are mostly able to go through my scraps and use what they want. But there are some scraps that I haven't let them use, and this is one of those. So I still have some left, but I was really tickled to get this project in this yarn that I loved so much that is no longer available. So those are all my finished objects for this week. I feel pretty good about that progress, honestly. You know, I know I'm not the only one to feel this way or to talk about this. And I don't have a large following. I don't have a large podcast. There's not a lot of expectation for my podcast. It's just like, if I can get here, I can get here. I don't feel like you put pressure on me, but there is just this, I have to fight that feeling, that sense of needing to produce things so I have something to show on the podcast. You know, there's a temptation to work faster so that I can show more. And I really fight that because I think it's good to have a little bit of that motivation, but I think anything like that can go too far. And the point is not just to show stuff, you know, it's to make things that I enjoy making and for people that I love and things that are useful and things that are beautiful, not just to say, hey, this is what I made. So sometimes when I start working on like compiling notes to get ready to sit down and chat with you all, you know, sometimes I'm tempted to wish I had more or, you know, just be too conscious of the number of projects that I'm showing. And I think that's normal, but I also think it's just an unfair thing that we do to ourselves. So, I don't know. I feel like 3 is kind of a lot to have finished in 2 weeks. And I feel good about the amount of time that I spent on those things and the things that I've crossed off my list. But, you know, I feel like we talk so much about getting the thing done and getting to the next thing. And I don't want to lose focus. Part of it is about giving that finished item and accomplishing things, but also a lot of it is just for the joy of the knitting. So anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk that I didn't plan on having, but but I'm happy with my 3 finished objects, and I'm excited for the things that I'm working on now, because there is always something else to work on. So I have 2 whips this week to share. First of all is another pair of socks, which is living in this chicken bag, which I've shown you before, but I will show you again because it's so cute. Yeah, we love our chickens around here. So my socks are spilling out of this bag because they barely fit, but it's just such a cute bag that I'm using it anyway. But this is my next pair of kid socks for Christmas. And I decided, I haven't done this in a long time, but I decided to knit them concurrently because sometimes it just feels like they're moving along at a better pace that way. So I have 2 socks that are already on the feet. And I'm so excited about that. This colorway is kind of getting blown out. I don't know. That's a little more accurate. This is Knit Picks Stroll in the Poppy colorway. And the pattern I'm using is the Morning Coffee Socks pattern. And so it's just a nice, simple texture. Nice, simple texture. Very memorizable, very easy to read the knitting. I don't really have to refer to the pattern. And I really love how they're knitting up. So I knit, this is, once again, this is 64 stitches, 10-inch leg. These feet are a little bit shorter than the feet on the green socks that I finished. So I'm well over halfway through with these. I'm over halfway through when I get to the 10-inch point on the leg and start the heel. These will be for my middle son, and because I have 2, there's just, I've got tangled up yarn everywhere. So I'm just sitting here wrestling it while I try to talk to you. But anyway, there they are. And now I'll put them down and talk about them and get that needle out of my hair. So what have I not said yet? These are for my middle son. He loves red. Red is not my favorite. I don't dislike most reds, but it's just not something that I'm drawn to. So it's not the thing I'm eager to knit. So I really looked for a red that would make him happy and that I would also enjoy knitting. And I really have enjoyed this one. I think it's a really pretty shade, and it has just been flying. So I talked about being on the couch all day last Friday, and I was out of town for 2 days before that, and so I finished all but the toe on the second green sock on our trip, and then on the way home from the trip last Thursday. And then Friday I spent the whole day on the couch. So I finished the toe of that last sock, and then I started both of these red socks. And I really got a flying start because I couldn't do anything. I don't usually spend the whole day sitting down. I have a lot to do around here. Lots of kids and animals and chores to keep up with. So I sit several times during the day, and I do knit a good bit during the day, most days when I'm at home, but it's not, concentrated several hours of knitting. So that was a bonus, since I had to be sitting down and my feet hurt as badly as they did. It was really nice to get a really good jump start on that pair of socks. So that's been a week now, and I think I'll finish these in the next couple of days. They've been what I've been knitting on the most, but it's not felt like a slog at all, which sometimes by the time I get to the third pair of boy socks with the really long legs and the growing man-sized feet, sometimes that third pair can feel kind of like a slog, but I've really enjoyed these. So my goal is to have these finished in the next few days and have them for a finished object next time, and move on to the girls' socks to finish those up for Christmas. Like I said, always trying to balance that, wanting to get things done and have the gifts ready, and also wanting to enjoy the knitting. So it is a thing I'm conscious of all the time. So is that a struggle for anybody else? Trying to find that balance? I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that. Okay, so my last whip is a new whip that was not at all on my radar when I recorded last time, but I love it. This is, what's it called? This is the Earthshine cowl by Hilary Smith Callis. I have knit several of her patterns. I have talked about her several times on this podcast. I really love her cowls. She starts most of her cowls, they're all the ones I've knit have been constructed more or less the same way, where it starts kind of as a circular shawl or half circular shawl. And then after it grows to a certain point, it connects and you knit it in the round as a cowl. So right now I'm doing the shawl portion where it's back and forth in rows. So I started this last night, and I've knit, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 rows today, but yeah, like 5 rows today. So most of this was just one evening after supper. And this is DK weight yarn. And while, again, I'm not in a hurry, it's not that I am rushing to get it done. I'm enjoying the process, but watching it grow and seeing the fabric materialize is very satisfying. So for it to grow this quickly, I'm used to doing socks and fingering weight projects. It has been really fun. So there are several things I wanted to share about this project. So I think I'll start with the yarn. First of all, I dyed this yarn several years ago, and it is probably the yarn that I am the most proud of that I've ever dyed. That's showing decently. This is a really soft, blushy pink. It's showing, I think it's showing a little more peachish on the camera. And then this blue is showing pretty well. I'm not a terribly experienced dyer. And the undyed yarn and the materials are kind of pricey. And so I've just done it little bits here and there. And just kind of played around with techniques and just had some fun with it. But this was the most the most satisfied I've ever been, I think, when I pulled something out of the pots and then watched it dry and saw how it turned out exactly how I had envisioned it. I was so excited. So several years before that, one of my uncles asked me to dye some yarn and use it to knit a shawl for my aunt, his wife, for a surprise for her. And he wanted to support me and give her a nice gift. And so we messaged back and forth for a while about what the right yarn would be and what the right color would be. And that was the other most satisfactory project maybe that I've ever made. The yarn came out beautifully, and then the project was beautiful, and that was such a fun experience. But one of the perks of that project that I made for my aunt was that the best value I could find on the yarn that we decided on for her was a pack of, I think, 10 skeins of a very nice merino cashmere blend. So I used 3 skeins for her, and what he paid me covered the whole package, the whole lot of yarn. So then I had these other 7 skeins to kind of play around with and practice dyeing on some nicer, different fibers than what I had previously dyed. So at the time when I was working on her project, that felt like a lot of pressure. But then hers turned out so well, and I just had so much fun with, really kind of rationing out the other cashmere skeins that I had. And at that point, it was by far the nicest yarn I had ever knit with, and still is some of the nicest. So I had these last 3 skeins, and I wanted them to look a certain way, and I wanted to knit a project for myself with these last 3 merino cashmere skeins, and I was just so happy with how they turned out. I've had several things that were really nice. I've had several things that I didn't love, but I could knit that and give it to somebody. But this was one of the, like I said, one of the most satisfactory dyeing experiences I've ever had. So I had a shawl in mind. I knit that shawl out of these yarns 6 years ago. I loved that shawl. It turned out to be so beautiful. But the combination of the shape of the shawl and the slickness of this yarn, it became such a pain to wear. I was so disappointed. Like I said, the piece itself was beautiful, but I could not wear it without having to adjust it almost constantly. It was very long, kind of narrow, and I was all the time having to adjust it because the yarn is so smooth and slick. So I wore it a handful of times. It went on one trip with me. That trip happened to be to Italy, so it's in several of my pictures of us around Rome, so that's pretty cool. But after that trip, I wore it maybe 2 or 3 more times, and then it sat in my closet for 6 years. And I think maybe I was talking about this on a podcast episode at the beginning of the year. Or maybe somebody else was talking about it in a podcast and it made me think of my own stuff. I don't remember, actually. But anyway, I decided sometime early this year that this yarn was one of the things I was most proud of ever, and it deserved to be worn and loved and seen, not sitting in a box in a closet. So it took me, it took me years to be able to rip that shawl out, but that's what I did. It was such a beautiful shawl, and I will likely knit it again. I think I would like to knit it again with a stickier yarn, but I never wore it. And so I kind of felt bad because it was such a pretty piece. But if it's not serving its purpose, it's not being used, it's not being appreciated, why not just reuse that yarn? Why not make something else with it? Knit something else with it. So I'm getting to enjoy the knitting again, knitting this yarn a second time. And I'm hoping that this project will be something that is more wearable for me. So I really love cowls because they're so unfussy. You can just put it over your head and go on about your day. Also, living in Alabama where the weather is warmer than some places, it's often more comfortable to wear a cowl than a large shawl. So even though this is merino and cashmere and I won't wear it, in August, it is something that I will be able to wear comfortably. So I've had this yarn that I ripped out and caked back up, and it's been sitting in my cabinet back there in my stash for most of this year. And I've been just kind of hoarding it because I didn't want to make that same mistake, I wanted to knit something that I would love and wear because I love these yarns so much. So when Emily of the Salt City Knits podcast mentioned that she was going to be co-hosting a make-along, with that same idea being kind of the premise and the motivation of using your hoarded and beloved skeins, I thought, well, that's a fun idea, but I don't have time to knit something for me because I have gifts to make. And then I kept having that thought, no, you should knit a cowl. No, you don't have time. And finally I gave in. So I feel like I'm doing pretty well with the gift knits right now. I'm pretty well on track to finish all the things for my own kids by Christmas, by December 1st is my goal. And then I can work on other gifts, small things that I have in mind for some friends in December and still have time to get them to them before Christmas. So I decided, why not? So I had 4 different cowls that I was trying to decide between. At first I had chosen a really pretty cabled cowl, but it was solid color and I really wanted to use the 2 colors together as I had originally intended them. So finally decided on the Earthshine cowl by Hilary Smith Callis, as I've mentioned already. And I have knit several patterns that she has written and never had any problems with them. I've given them as gifts. Like, her patterns, her cowls are something that I go back to over and over and over. So it felt like it would be an easy win to knit these yarns into something that I would definitely wear down the road. So I don't have names for the colorways or anything. I'm not even certain what the yarn is anymore. The seller I bought it from, I found it on Etsy, and I mean, this was probably 9 years ago, and that seller is no longer on Etsy, so I don't even know exactly what this is. I just know it's merino and cashmere, and I think it's got some nylon in it, but I can't share specifics for you to go find it because I don't know where to find it. But it is DK weight, and right now the beginning of the pattern, the main color is the blue, and I'm using the pink for the contrast. When I get to the halfway point of the cowl, there will be some shorter sections of blue and pink alternating, and then the pink will become the main color and the blue will be the contrast. And so it's a really pretty pattern, and it's a good way to use up most of both of these colors. So I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited for the make along. That was my motivation to go ahead and get it on the needles. And while it is not going to be my priority project because I am working on gifts, it is a lot of fun and it is almost mindless. So it's fabulous for reading with the kids or late at night when I'm exhausted, but my husband is still trying to finish the football game and I'm trying to sit up with him. So very much enjoying this, and these colors just make me happy. I really I keep pausing to look at it as I've been working on it. So really excited to have these yarns back out of the cabinet and being put to good use. Also, let me show off while I'm at it. This is a Progress Keeper from Emily of Salt City Knits. She sent me some Progress Keepers for Christmas a few years ago, and I just love the pink and gold. It's so pretty. So there's that. That's my other active whip right now. I've always got others that are inactive, and that cart that cart over there has a bunch of whips that are not going to see the light of day until after Christmas. But maybe one of these days I'll work on getting things off the needles that have been there for a long time. We'll see. I have this in a bag by Woolly Bean. I love her bags. I think she's kind of backed off on selling bags lately. I think she's only selling occasionally just on her Instagram stories, not really from a storefront anymore. But I have 2, maybe 3 of her bags, and they're just lovely. I really, really like them. It's got a nice leather handle. So sweet. So there's that. Let me see. I have, there's always plans, future knitting plans. My goal for this next couple of weeks is to finish the red socks for my son. That'll have all 3 pairs of the Christmas socks for my boys finished. I have 3 pairs of girl socks for Christmas and 1 pair of December birthday socks that need to be finished. So I don't remember where I am in all of those, but they all like shorty socks and theirs fly off my needles. So I will not have all of those done by the next podcast, but that's what I'm working on for this month. And so I'd like to see how far I can get with those socks in the next couple of weeks. And that's pretty much what I'm working on right now. Lots of socks. Before I close, I wanted to show some things that my daughter has been working on, because my daughter has been bitten once again by the knitting bug. I taught all of my girls to knit several years ago. The youngest one is 15. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago is when they really learned to knit. And my youngest daughter spent months, most of this year, working on toys that she was planning on selling at an event that we had planned on going to that was canceled. She had rented a table, a vendor table, and was all set up to sell some of her work. Our event was canceled and she was not able to do that, but several of my knitting group friends caught wind of that and bought several things from her for Christmas gifts. So she's been really excited to be able to sell some of her work. But I asked her to bring me some of her favorites to show here on the podcast so I could show off her knitting a little bit. And they never actually get to watch my episodes until well after, because I'm always showing things I'm working on for them. So she won't see this for a while, but I wanted to show off some of the things she's been working on. So this, isn't that cute? This is a puppy in a blanket that she also knitted. This is a pattern by Susan B. Anderson. And what is that book called? Hang on. It's from the Itty Bitty Toys book by Susan B. Anderson. I bought this when it was new, I think. And I knit several gifts for my kids out of this book, and now it's one of their favorites to knit from. So also from that book, she knit this little topsy-turvy 2-in-1 doll with the little braids. It's so cute. So I think that's so sweet. And then from this book, several months ago, I won this book in a giveaway from Amy of Noble Character Crafts, and my girls have knit so many things out of this book. We would highly recommend this if you enjoy making toys and that kind of thing. But this is called a pocket protector. It's a little monster, and it has a little friend that lives in its pocket. So my daughter decided to secure the little friend into the pocket with a string of yarn because, you know, if a small child were to play with this, it would likely lose the little tiny little bean. But then somebody told her it looked like an umbilical cord, so she was kind of nervous about that. But oh, this is so cute. So she made lots of these little monsters, and she's made lots of little alligators. And this is one of my favorite things. These are called bed bugs. So it's just a funny little made-up critter with a sleep cap on. How cute is that? She's still have tags from the event that she didn't get to sell at. So she's sold some of these to friends, and like I said, some of my knitting friends heard about it and bought a bunch of things from her. And I'm thinking I might see about listing some of them on my Instagram stories, just seeing if there's anybody who's interested. They do make fabulous little people gifts, like for children. Isn't it sweet? So this is actually a very nostalgic pattern for me. And I keep thinking of this as I see this puppy. If you're new here, you might not know this because I haven't mentioned it in a while, but we have 6 children and 3 of them were adopted through the foster care system. After living with us for about a year and a half, we finally were able to adopt them. We met them in the autumn, and they moved in with us right before Christmas, like 10 days before Christmas. And I worked my fingers off, stayed up late nights, and knit a stuffed toy for each child for Christmas. That was their main gift. So one of them got the bear out of the Susan B. Anderson book, and one of them got the snake, and one of them got a brown puppy in a blue blanket. And that was such a sweet day. They were so excited to have their handmade gifts, and I've been knitting for them every Christmas ever since. So that's one of the things I love about knitting, you know, how our memories are woven up into the things we make. And that's just such a sweet memory for all of us. So I guess that's about it for this time. I have rambled and meandered down some paths I did not realize I was going to take, but thanks for following along with me and hanging out for a while. If you are still here, thanks for following the rambling. I will hope to catch up with you again in 2 weeks. I hope you are all doing well, and I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have so much fun with your making. Bye.